Down here by New City, this used to be the Chicago YMCA, and then they demolished it, and then it sat empty for a while, and then they built this New City. Now, they didn't really tap in. The builder, the developer, had an idea, but he really didn't tap into the community around it. But this would be, and the Yard House moved out of here, this would be a great place for a nightclub. Oh yeah. All these places tend to close down earlier, so you don't have to worry about it. And if you're doing it right, you don't disturb the tenants up there. But you can have a nightclub on this 2 stories here. The Yard House was on the bottom story. On the second story was a Mexican restaurant, and the Mexican restaurant on the back side, the street that's on the other side, you could open the windows and have a view of the street. Now, on the first floor, you couldn't, but you can do that as well. Have an indoor patio place where you open the windows and have screens, and it allows the fresh air in, but it's an indoor patio type. But this would be awesome to put a nightclub here. This area is perfect. That place would be perfect for a very hot nightclub. Truly. And so it starts later in all these places. They tend to close down earlier. And when that nightclub's getting business at 9, 10 o'clock and that, it starts 11 o'clock. If it has a 4 and 5 in the morning license you need, would be incredibly good. And this is a ripe area with, so that's perfect inside that mall, and it, gets all these young, hip people coming in, and they get to see all these businesses. They shop at Saks Fifth Avenue. That's off Saks Fifth Avenue. That's the discounter. But all these young, hip people going in there, there's the Paul right down the street, and this is still part of the Paul. The Paul's up on Fullerton. This is North Avenue here, Clybourne, at the green light there. This is right in front of me, Clybourne, but at the green light is North Avenue. Down from that is Armitage and then Fullerton. So that's all part of the DePaul community. And they can come up here, the undergrads, the juniors and seniors, and the graduate students that are 21 and above. And so you can tap in here, and it's right next to the Amphitheater. And so it would bring in a young, hip crowd. On the other side is the Marianos and that. But it would bring in this young, trendy, hip crowd in here. And then they would come back during the day to use all these other places. Truly. Because in an area you go, and that's what they don't have, and we'll go by Y-Bar and Spy Bar and the electric company and that, but they don't come back in that area because there's nothing there for them that's during the day, meaning in the evening after 5, between 5 and 10, for them to come back to. Now, there is a sushi union that probably gets some, but if I was the sushi union, I would be marketing at Y-Bar, the Electric Hotel, and Soundbar, and marketing coming back during the day. I would do it as Hooters as well, because they get their crowd 10 and later. And so as you exit Hooters, they close about 12 or so. You would be going into the clubs. You would be going into the Electric Hotel, the Y-Bar, the Sound Bar. And so Hooters and that can market into these places and bringing that crowd back to the area during the day. And truly, in the daytime, on the weekends and that. So, again, they can tap into this nightclub audience, and it's not that they're like me. I used to go out late, younger, in the 20s and 30s. I'd go out late, like with Jen, my ex. She was 23, 24 when I first started dating her. I was in my early 30s. And the first, summer that we were together, we were out with all of her friends, and we were out to 4 and 5 in the morning. And then you get up, you have a few hours of sleep, you go to work, and then you go home and take a nap after work. But that was, really Thursday, Friday. So you had one night that you were sleep deprived, and that was Thursday. And so you work through Friday, you get off on Friday, you take a nap for an hour or so at home, and then go hit the happy hour. And then out for the rest of Friday night, and then sleep in a little bit on Saturday, and you catch it. And that's why Park has a 5:30 service, and so did New Life have a 5:30. And so for all that age, catching the 5:30 service was awesome on Sundays, because they be out to 5, 6, 7 in the morning. They go to sleep, they wake up, noon, 2 o'clock. And just like Louis, the comedian, that was his normal schedule. He worked in the comedy clubs. He'd get off at 2 or 3 in the morning in New York, and then he would go out like Steve Buscemi used to here. He'd shoot in the movies, and then he'd go hang out at the Underground Wonder Bar, and then close at 4 or 5 in the morning. And he knew the staff, and he would hang out there. And he would, that was after doing his movie stuff. He would go to the Underground Wonder Bar. Sam Kinison used to go to Club Congress in Tucson. That's where I met Sam. I met Steve Buscemi at the Wonder Bar. Super nice. They were nice. Didn't really say much, that we didn't have much of a but they hung out having a good time, and he was shooting some westerns at Old Tucson, Sam Kinison. And then he would go out to Club Congress, because they would shoot, and he'd get off around 11, 12 o'clock, or around 11 or so. Tucson, they close a little, and he would go to Club Congress and hang out there for an hour or 2 hours, taking, and he's an older man at that time. So I was in my, later 20s when I ran into him. And he was, in his late 40s or early 50s. And he was hanging out at the hot, trendy nightclub. Club Congress was like the hottest place in Tucson. Had great alternative music. It was a great scene. So a lot of these guys, like Johnny Depp and them, I ran into and met Mel Gibson here in Chicago. I'd never met Johnny Depp in person. Just my friends have. But Mel Gibson, he hung out at Elixir and the club scene when he came here. He was shooting a movie, I think at What Women Want and so on. And he would go out late night and he'd be in the club scene. So all those entertainers like Bill Ayers or Bill Maher, he goes out to clubs in LA after he does his show. He gets off late night and he goes out around 10 or so o'clock, and he goes out to the Foundation Room in the House of Blues. That was his big place, and he would go out and hang out in the Foundation Room. It's the VIP room in the House of Blues. But all these guys, after they're done shooting their stuff, they want to go out. And they're out of town, they're away from their families and so on, and they go out and have, drinks and so on, and hang out and have a good time and enjoy the city. And no one bothered them. Truly, no one bothered them, really. people said hi and recognized them and so on, but most of the time I never saw a bad interaction. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I've never, all the different ones. I've been around in New York, Los Angeles, Tucson, Chicago, and been around these places with these celebrities, and people really in these club scenes, because it was regular, like Prince was down here, that people are used to seeing the celebrities because they go out in the club scene, but they tend to go to the hot clubs. So to be in the hot clubs, you tend to be more of a select audience too, because they tend to be a little bit more picky. And so you have these clubs here, and you have like Soundbar here, and then you have Spy Bar on the other side, and they should be working together in joint marketing. They own 3, there's a 4th, they should be working together. And there could be a 5th across the street, but these places around can market into this audience. Like here, this Renaissance, not the Renaissance Hotel, but they're talking about these kids are getting into places, even if they're renting, they buying stuff and they want to redo the inside and, kind of make it their own and give it a look. So the curtains and stuff that they can do. And so even when you're renting a place, we rented places and we changed the curtains or the shades and so on to give it more of a personal touch. And we, furniture or whatever. So that scene, those retailers can reach out into, and it's a market they want to tap into. And they're getting them young, and these people tend to be hot, trendy, and connected. Truly, they tend to be people. They like to go out, they like to hang on the scenes, they like to meet people, and so on. And so they tend to be a little bit of influencers. So again, it's a good thing to tap into. So they're not working against these places like Target and that. They're working with them. And it's a market that Target would want to tap into. So I would hire somebody from Target to hang out. And let's go by the clubs. Let's go by Hooters first. I'll go by Hooters. But I would hire somebody with the permission of the club to be in there to promote Target to them. Go in there with the Target corporate card and buy some drinks. Make some friends. Like the next beer is on Target. Now you have to make sure the club is ethical and they don't overserve people. Truly. And if Target does its due diligence and sets up things with them and they're ethical, meaning they check the people and they cut off people and they say, yeah, you can't, Target's buying a beer, but you've been overserved. Meaning you're getting overserved, I can't give you a beer. We'll hold it here. You go to, Zero or whatever, or go to water for a while, and you breathalyze again, and you're good. I'll give you the beer and charge it to Target. So you can't have it now, but in an hour or two, go out, hit the dance floor, talk, go out, drink some water for a while, calm down, and then I'll give you that beer. But this is the way to hit this thing where you can have these people, like Governor Rauner. He hired an individual to go to all the Asian events. So he showed up at my Chinatown events. He was a Korean guy, but he was a younger guy who was, hip, and he was designed to hang out at these events. So he went to the Chinatown Chamber events. He went to the Castle, the Chinese American Service League events. And he went to these other events that were held by my Asian friends. And he promoted Bruce Rauner. So people, he get around, he introduce, he hang out with them. He's an influencer, right? And he hang around with them, and then he's like, oh yeah, what do you do? Oh, I work for Bruce Rauner. I'm his Asian representative. And if you have any questions about the platform or anything else, here's his card, and I'd be happy to send you over information or anything. And so he would give out the card and, promote. So here's Hooters. And Hooters can work for it. These girls can get off and they can go work at bottle service at Electric Club or Y Bar or Sound Bar. When they get off at Hooters, they're still up. They're not going to bed. And so they can have a second job over here. It's not a conflict of interest. And they close down Hooters and they can work right over here. So they can be bottle service girls, bartenders, cocktail waitresses. They can work the door. Oh yeah, girls like my friend Grace was an Asian girl, only Asian girl in all the club industry. She worked the door for my friend Roman, and everybody knew Grace. She worked the door for a decade, and every single person knew her because she was the only Asian female working the door. My other friend was one of the rare Asian guys who worked the door. He worked at Y Bar, and I had another friend, Phil. He was a martial artist, and he was family owns, but he worked in another club. But they were not the many. They were more the few. You had more white people and black people working the door. But they made the influence. So these places can tap into it, but also designing things around here to tap into the market. Like here's the Union Sushi, and they can do stuff with them. They can even have a promo. They make late night, they bundle it up, and you can buy late night sushi packages. It's called Beto boxes, like my friend Rich, and you can buy a Beto box. So they can offer food service with that. So again, and I was looking up, now vodka is the number one spirit in the world. 31% of the global market vodka has, because it mixes well with everything. But soju is right there, has a dominant market. The Korean soju is a dominant market, so they can make drinks with soju. So again, but these places around here and the properties, like my friend Susan, I'll use her again, she moved over by Hubbard Street because she wanted to be around the hot places. But let's go back before Susan. My friends moved into Wrigleyville that were in their 20s and 30s. Why? Because Wrigleyville was a hot place to go out around. And so not only did they want to see Cubs games, but they wanted to be around Wrigleyville during the Cubs games and during the week because it was a great place to hang out. And so the apartments went more because it had a great social life. And these are people out of college that are working, but are in their 20s and 30s, and they wanted a great social life. And so they would move into the Wrigleyville area. So my friend Ray owned a place over there. My friend Sheila owned a place on Sheffield. And they had a great life on Sheffield and Addison. It used to. And then it went horrible. And you get the bad element in because the clubs don't do the right thing and that. And they destroyed it. Now they have to reinvent it, but it's still not what it used to be. So the thing is preserving things and making it better. But you have to be very selective, and you have to screen people right. All these places drop because they get the bad element in. And why did a bad element want to be there? They want to be around these people and penetrate these crowds and influence them because it's good money for them. So if they can get them on drugs and that takes away from the club. And it brings the club all kinds of liability. My friend lost a crowbar because not them, but these kids were selling ecstasy, liquid ecstasy, in the club. So people weren't drinking, they were doing the drugs. And then that person had a bad reaction to it, and they did, and then it ended up losing their liquor license, and it closed down, and the Crowbar was no more. Not because they didn't have anything to do with it, but they also didn't screen people coming in for drugs. So, working the door, you have to screen these people. I've been in clubs where they have metal detectors. I don't understand why they don't have metal detectors and that, and also search them for drugs. Now you have to have something that detects drugs. So on their clothing and that, some kind of fluorescent camera that'll show up the particles from heroin, cocaine, marijuana, and that. Because if they're using, the residue will be on their face, the residue will be on their hands, the residue will be on their clothing. So you work in the door and you just scan them like with an ultraviolet light. But they can't see, but you can see. You have glasses and you hit them with the light. And they can't see it lit up, but if you have special glasses, so it's not to there, but you can see if they have any residue on them. And the residue gives you the authority to do a deeper search. My other friends, they lost a drink because the people were selling cocaine in the drink. They were selling cocaine inside the club, and they lost their liquor license. And the place was booming. And now you don't hear about the 9 group. They lost the 9 steakhouse. They lost a drink. They lost all their stuff in Chicago. Literally. Because their security that works the door doesn't do the right thing. So again, you have to train these, and these doormen have to be professional. It can't be a joke anymore. These people have to be professionals, and they have to be clean. They can't be the ones helping the drug dealers. They're the ones putting them away. Catching them and putting them away. Protecting ownership. Do you know how much, let's go by Tao, do you know how much they put in the renovation? And they violated the historical code, and they shut them down for a while because they weren't allowed to do certain things to the structure. And when they got inspected, they violated it, and then they had to go through a court and everything and had to pay fines. And then they were allowed to go continue on, but under deeper scrutiny because it's a historical site. The building has landmark status. That means it's protected. So you have a nightclub in there, that building is protected. But they pay a fortune. The investors think millions and millions of dollars. Think about this in Daddy O's in Cancun or in Tijuana. My friend who I worked for ran the largest club in Cancun. He's a Hispanic guy. He used to work for me at Baja, and he became the general manager of a large club in Cancun. And keeping out the criminal element was very important to him. They have big investors investing heavy money into the club, and it brings the wrong element. And they take their security and their club very serious. That's why all these places go away. They hire, like, you can be a doorman. Really? When I started out being a doorman at the Wildcat House in Tucson, Arizona, my manager was a black belt in numerous martial arts. I worked at Excalibur with people that had martial arts. I worked at Baja with people. I grew up wrestling, boxing, numerous martial arts, and very much anti-drug. And so, like at Charlie's, if you were selling, you'd be gone. I kept the guy out that sold cocaine. He was selling cocaine. He worked at Riva as a waiter. He wasn't welcome at my place. Truly, he wasn't welcome. He came in once and no more. I kept him away. I don't want him selling liquor. I don't want people mixing drugs. I don't want people overdosing, having, these things. I want them to drink what we have to offer, to experience what we have to offer. I don't want the parasites on property selling their drugs. Truly, selling their drugs on my property. I don't want that liability. And now the liquor license has a big problem, because with legal marijuana, and marijuana and liquor do not mix. It's very bad to mix marijuana and liquor. So the liquor board, you can't sell marijuana if you sell liquor. And if you sell marijuana, you can't sell liquor. And if you sell liquor, you can't sell marijuana. They can't allow people to mix. So again, you're going to go down here into town, and this is right down the street from Electric, Y, Soundbar, and the place across the street. But if you take these jobs seriously, and these people are professionals, and they take it, truly, we had people with college degrees working the door. And they took their job seriously. None of them sold drugs. When we caught counterfeit people trying to pass counterfeit money, we caught people pickpocketing, we caught all kinds of bad people. So these people need to take their job seriously. These are large investments, and they need to do them correctly. Like the signature room at the John Hancock. People used to love to go up there late night. Do you know that was one of the first Skydeck, and they have a similar and they should turn it from a private club and open it to the public, but you have to be on a vetted list? Truly. Like anything, you got to go through the background check. So you submit your ID and everything on Open Table, and they run you. And they give you approved or denied, and why you're denied, like a credit card report. You can't come into the club. They can't have people going up there and being a threat. But people used to go to the signature room late night. I was going to go there after a wedding. All my friends went over there and hung out. It's a great place to hang out. It has a great view. Why doesn't it have a 4 and 5 o'clock license? My friends used to take me to this club in New York. Matt King and Michael Elson used to take me to this club in New York. Upstairs, they were redoing it. It had an amazing view of New York. And we also went to other Skydecks that were open late and had these amazing views. And they were great open air on like the 70th floor or whatever. Big open air. We have some roof decks here. But there's also ones with just incredible views like the John Hancock Signature Room. And they have a similar room at the Sears Tower. And these can be incredible dining and restaurant experiences. And they should be open to 4 and 5 in the morning. That brings all kinds of late night business into the financial district. And you can market into that crowd. You can do mocktails. Arabs can go hang out. I hung out with tons of Arabs. So what? You don't drink? I didn't drink and hung out at all these clubs. I used to go out with all my friends hanging out at the clubs, and I didn't drink. I drank water, Diet Coke. You can make me a mocktail pina colada or mocktail margarita. Truly. And so I go out and I was their designated driver. Like Costa and Michael and that, they go out and they had no problem. Like Jen would go out, we go out with all her friends, and I would drive, making sure everybody was safe. But you can take Uber and Lyfts or whatever.